Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business Spotlight podcast, where we shine a light on the incredible entrepreneurs and business leaders in our community. I'm your host, Craig Whipperman with Music City Action Coach, and today we're excited to introduce to you someone who is blazing a trail in Christian publishing right here in Nashville. Our guest today is Ivan Filby, CEO of Seedbed Incorporated. We'll dive into Ivan's background, explore the challenges he's faced, and the successes he's celebrated. Whether you're a fellow entrepreneur, an aspiring business owner, or someone who loves to support local businesses, this conversation is sure to inspire and inform. So without further ado, let's welcome Ivan to the podcast. Ivan, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Craig. Hey, and hi, everyone. It's good to be speaking to you.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your history and what you're doing now with
Sure.
Seedbed.
Yeah, so sure. So I'm a Briton actually. I work in Nashville, but from Northern Ireland as the way the new world works. So my office is in Franklin. I work from Northern Ireland. So my background is in higher education. I was a business professor. I worked at Trinity College Dublin. This is beautiful top 100 university in the world. I was there for 16 years and felt called into Christian higher education and moved from Dublin to a small town near St. Louis to become the chair of a management department at Greenville College, as then was Greenville University now. And then I moved to Southern California to San Diego to be dean of a business school. And then after a year, I moved back to Illinois to be a university president. And then at the beginning of COVID, we moved from Illinois to Northern Ireland to help care for my mother-in-law. My father-in-law had just died just before COVID, and in the lockdown in the UK, it was pretty brutal. So she was not allowed to have anyone to visit her. And my wife said, we're going to Northern Ireland, where she is from. And so we live in Northern Ireland, and I've done some consultancy gigs with US universities, and now lead this wonderful publishing company called Seedbed, which is something very close to my heart and very passionate about.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. And each one of these roles that you've had in the past, all of them been in an academic type of
All
role?
yeah, my previously it's all been in an academic environment. So it would have been either as a professor teaching. So when I started in Dublin, I would have 500 in my first year classes up to 10 or 11 senior managers in my executive MBA classes. Then did consultancy with the European Commission and airports and banks. And so that would have been what I did there. And then I moved into heading up all of the international operations of my university. So that was a significant. We had a couple of thousand of international students from 90 countries. And so that was a big operation with a good staff. And I got to travel the world. I mean, Craig, imagine there was time I traveled so much, I had to beg one of my staff to go to Hawaii for me. Honestly, I got on my knees, so I can't do another trip. Would you go? And another person, another time, I said, I can't do another trip. Would you go to Singapore for me? And these are places I've never been, and I wish I'd have gone, but I just could. I didn't have another trip in me. Had a young
Exhausting.
family, and you just can't go everywhere.
Wow.
Um, but great opportunities, and there's great opportunities for the people who were able to go as part of good development for them.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. So this role now with Seedbed, you're performing in the role of CEO.
That's right.
How did that come about?
It's really very strange. So it was unsought. So I had written a book that I'd asked Seedbed to publish in 2021. It came out in 2021. I was on the gifts and ministry of the Holy Spirit. And Seedbed was just a publisher I thought had a lot of integrity. I liked what they were trying to do. And a couple of years later, they asked, would I join their board? And I was delighted to do that. And at the first board meeting, I knew they'd had a presidential search, and I assumed that they were going to explain who the next president was. And they said, well, we've prayed and we don't feel we've found the right woman or man yet. And so that's fine. I'm sure you'll tell me in due course. And a couple of weeks later, the CEO or the chairman of the board called me up and said I was driving over one of the bridges where he lives and said, I just really felt God say, Ivan, you're meant to be the next leader. Would you consider it? And Craig, I said, I live on a different continent. do you understand that? He said, yeah, but the world's different now. You've worked in remote situations, you've consulted remotely, you love Seedbed, you love our ministry, the people respect you, you're an author, you're ordained, you're a business person. Would you consider it? And I did, and we prayed about it and thought, yeah, this is really sweet. And for however short or however long, it's a company that I'm passionate about. I think I can do some good things with. And my passion, Craig, is then training the next generation of leaders.
Hmm.
Always want to raise up other leaders who are better than me and can take over and take the company in ways and visions that I might never have thought of. And that's such a joy and such a privilege. So my plan is always to work myself out of a job and then find something else.
Right. Yeah. So at Seedbed, uh, what a uh, what a fascinating, gosh, I don't know, combination. Both you and Seedbed. It seems like you definitely share the same DNA.
Yeah, and it's a passion. I mean, I've been a Christ follower for a lot of years now, and churches need good resources and resources that they can trust by thoughtful authors. And I've got to meet just remarkable people. I mean that I just feel my own devotion is increased. I work with people who I work with my heroes. I
Hmm.
work with people who are younger than me, who I would call my spiritual parents. I mean, people who I just look up to, and that's good. And I can bring my managerial skills to an organization that oftentimes in very missional organizations, sometimes you're so focused on the mission that sometimes the nuts and bolts of what you need to do in order to keep that mission on the road and thriving and always front and center. And I can work in the back office, making sure they're taken care of, and then freeing up other people who are just wonderful front spokespeople for the ministry to be doing what they want to do. I mean,
Right.
I mean, Greg, I think one of the challenges of so many small businesses is that the person who starts them, whether it's a baker or a chocolatier or whatever, they love baking, they love getting their hands in the dough, and then as the business grows, then they can't do that so much. They have to do some accounting, and they've got to do some marketing, and they've got to do some insurance, and then they're hiring people to do the very things that they loved. And suddenly they're looking at it and saying, this is not what was this, I love my business, but I'm no longer doing the things I'm passionate about. And the great thing for an organization to be able to appoint a CEO who can take care of that business is that frees up the bakers and the chocolatiers and the writers and the speakers and the authors and the ministers to get back to their first love, what they're really called, what their vocation is. And so, I see myself as freeing them up to do what God has called them to be and to do. And that's quite wonderful. It's very satisfying.
That is awesome. Yeah. So, uh, which reminds me, as you described that, have you ever read the book, The E-Myth?
So that was exactly, I remember speaking to the author when I was dean of a business school. He came to speak, and right at the beginning of that book, he talks about, I don't know if it's the car mechanic or the baker,
Right.
but that whole principle of the very thing you love is often the thing you end up not doing. And
Right.
that's the challenge of organizations.
Right. Well, he talks about three distinct roles, right? There's the technician, i.e., the baker or the mechanic.
Yeah.
There's the manager, and then there's the business owner, and you have to wear distinctly different hats.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, business owners don't figure that out. Once they do, you're right, they get separated from the passion.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you about Seedbed's history. What can you share with us about how
Sure.
they started and how they got into this publishing business?
Yeah, so Seedbed would have been formed at Asbury Theological Seminary back into the early 2000s when the dean of the chapel then just started to talk, and people would go to him. His name was John David Walt, J.D. Walt, and they'd say, gosh, this is really so interesting. Would you write? And so he would start to put these little chapel sermons together in small books. And then churches would say, hey, would you print them? Because we want to use them in Bible studies, and gosh, this is just so interesting. So he would start to write them, and then he got to say, well, how are we going to publish them? So a small publishing company was formed to do this, and then gradually other authors had come along and saying, I just like what you're doing. We're running in a same kind of direction. We're concerned about the movement of the Holy Spirit in church. We're concerned about just people understanding all that God might have called them to do and to be. Can we publish with you? And so that started to grow. And then these people started to say that the readers of books started to say, hey, we want to get together. And so they started to run conferences where just readers would come together to worship and pray and hear from some of their authors. So they've had an annual conference, a couple of thousand people come every year, in different places. It was in Texas last year. It's been in Nashville. Next year it's going to be in Alabama. But it's wonderful. You find these people come together, and we call them a tribe. They're people who are on the same kind of journey together and care for one another and know one another, and they're in all groups all over the place, chatting about our resources. So we have a daily devotional called the Wake Up Call. So it's about 40,000 people a day do that together, and there's a Facebook group of 20,000 people who discuss it, and it feels like you're doing it together. And they're all from all sorts of different church backgrounds, Methodist, Baptist, Independents, Catholic, Anglican, Brethren. They're coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, finding something in the material that's saying, gosh, this is different, this is good. I trust this material, and I feel more connected to God and more connected to other people as a result. And so
Hmm.
that's fun. I mean, that's a great joy.
Yeah, I was at the website and I saw the wake up call, promoted there, and you could enter your name and email
Mhm.
address. So how does that work? Is it like everyone on a Zoom call, or is it?
No, it's recorded. So a new one goes out every day, and they can vary from some are 15 minutes, some are 5 minutes, depending on who the author is.
Mm-hmm.
And so every day it's a fresh recording. It goes out. It's not done on Zoom. It's recorded. It's sent out with questions through our email
Oh,
list. And
cool.
then on the Facebook group, which is a closed group, people have to apply to be part of
Uh-huh.
that group. They then discuss it.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and then there's a lot of churches who use that material. So every week there's a call for, I don't know, there's a group of 500 pastors who are in this list group, and probably 50 of them get together any single week to talk about how to use some of this material in their sermons. And then there's
Hmm.
all sorts of different prayer groups all over the nation, people using this material as part of their prayer and their devotional. So it's fun.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fascinating.
yeah, so and it takes a lot of work. I mean, I just recently recorded the final 6 days of the year. So I'm the closer in baseball terms, deep into the ninth innings of the year, and I've got to finish off the year. And it takes quite a lot of thought, because really each one is about 1,000 words, not much more than 1,000 words. So you've got to try and make something intriguing and challenging and useful and practical in 1,000 words. And the people who write all the time, they're doing it every day. So every day they're writing 1,000 words for this, plus other
Wow.
writing, plus lots of correspondence, calls, meetings. I mean, they're just very, very gifted and very creative. It's
Wow. So
I
do you
wish I
have,
could write 1,000 words every day of that quality, but I'm not there yet, Craig, that's for sure.
well, so how does the creation of the thousand words come about? They write it for you? You give them ideas,
Yeah,
or you
no,
come up
we
with your
would we
own?
would have so the main person who does it is really the guy who founded Seedbed, who was at Asbury Theological Seminary, John David Walt. So he would normally go through a biblical book and just his observations and what he've learned. So he's from a farm background, so there's a lot of farming analogies, there's stories. So trying to help people to engage with scripture well. And that's a lot harder than you might think. The challenge for the Bible, we have lots in Barnes and Noble, but the Bible wasn't written last year. It was written in different languages at least 2,000 years ago, and some of the Old Testament a lot longer in different cultures, in different contexts. And so you can't just pick it up and read it as if it was on the New York Times this morning. You have to understand, okay, what's being said? What does it mean? How do we understand it? How do we apply it into our lives in America in the 21st century when it's not in Babylon in however many centuries before, 700 years before Christ? I mean, so he's just very gifted at
Hmm.
helping people make those connections. And they're ordinary people like you and me. These are not theologians or superstars or super spiritual people. These are people who get their hands dirty in the muck of life and saying, Jesus, we want to be changed more and more by you. And so every day, I mean, he's very good. There's other gifted writers. And then sometimes there'll be a thinker that we think he would just be great. So the current series is by a pastor of a church of 14,000 from Texas, from Houston, and just
Hmm.
a really gifted communicator. Before he was a pastor, he was a radio DJ. And so he has a very slick presentation. He's just thoughtful. It's just that just engages audiences in different ways, and
Hmm.
that makes it rich and joyful.
Hmm. And so, how does a do pastors and church leaders uh, hear about Seedbed and inquire? How does it grow?
All over the place. I was just talking with my director of marketing, say, how do people find out? And it's the number one word, just like all of the websites and everything, is word of mouth. A pastor will say, I've just found this incredibly helpful. You should check it out. So that's the number one way people find our resources,
Hmm.
or and at our conferences, someone invites them, someone tells them
Hmm.
about it, or about a particular book they found
Hmm.
helpful. And it's wonderful. I don't know where it's from. I got a letter from the States a couple of weeks ago where someone was reading one of my books and was talking about the pages, just said this was just so helpful. And it's just really refreshing as an author when someone
Oh my
takes
God.
the time. And this is not a quick note. This is several pages, handwritten, cursive, old school writing, Craig, just to say this really impacted my life. And that's just super. I mean, it really
Hmm.
is very, very encouraging.
Right. You know what? I would imagine it would be very rewarding to hear someone like that make comments
It
about
is.
something.
And we get those comments all the time, every time we go to a conference, or, when we get all sorts of unsolicited um, feedback, or when we do surveys. So as a CEO, I'm big into data.
Hmm.
I like to measure impact. When people, we have donors who help our mission as well as selling our book, and we want to tell people the impact we're making. And so the wake up call this year it's 40,000 people a day this year. We know it will be opened and read more than 8.2 million times. And
Wow.
and some of those are the people, they will open it every day. But if you think, for most people, if they go to church once a week or once a month, if they go once a month, they hear 12 sermons. If they go
Hmm.
once a week, they're going to hear 52. But these are people who every day are journeying together, hearing something that they keep coming back for more and inviting the friends. And that's quite wonderful. So those sort of numbers get your attention. They get my attention because what you're producing is valuable to people. People, sometimes people unsubscribe, but every month more people are joining. Every month there'll be 10 or 12 people who unsubscribe, but hundreds who join and
Hmm.
and who stay. And so, something good is happening here.
Hmm.
Uh, and the same for any business, whether the joyful thing about business, and I'm from a Christian background, but business done well expresses part of this creativity of God. God is a
Hmm.
creative God, and business people resonate with his character because they create new things. They give people dignity. They give people a means of support and hope, and they make the world a better place done well.
Right.
And that's so wonderful. That's why
Right.
small businesses are so redemptive in all sorts of different ways.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. It gives people, if done right, that's the
Yeah.
catchphrase, right? If done right.
Not all businesses, businesses, I mean, unfortunately, so often in our movies, sometimes businesses are seen as exploitative, and you get all of the some of the very bad parts of organizations, but for most part, business leaders are good people who
Yes.
bring great things to their local community, who are
Right.
not looking to defraud him. They're looking to do something of high quality that they're proud of, that they want as a legacy. And that's just brilliant.
Hmm. Yeah. There's a book I read, and the name of it is Thou Shalt Prosper,
All
written.
right, yeah.
Have you heard of it or read
I
it?
have not, but I like the title.
So it's written by a Jewish rabbi and based on not religious principles, but on the basic living principles, I'll call them, that were
Yeah,
derived from Jewish culture
yeah.
some time ago. And I remember the 10th commandment. Oh, yeah, the 10th commandment, because there's 10 commandments
All right.
that he follows, is never retire,
Yeah,
because retirement it's kind of a Western
yeah,
concept that's only been, I think I've been around probably the last 100 years or so, maybe.
yeah,
But throughout time, people have never really ever retired.
yeah.
They work until, because it gives them a sense of purpose, right? It gives people a
That's
sense of
right.
purpose.
And it's funny that you mentioned that because Seedbed is just going to be putting on a workshop in early 2025, which we call the Fellowship of the Unretired.
Hmm.
So all of these people we would say are in the kingdom prime. So when we think about the kingdom of God, they're in their senior years. And in our culture, so often they're dismissed,
Hmm.
but they've got all of this wisdom and this rich understanding and a fabric of life. And how do we now start to deploy all of those people for good? And so
Right.
that's exciting, both in their church and in their community, so that both younger people can see, gosh, these people have got really great things to add, and they feel I'm not on the shelf. I've got purpose and meaning, and it's just terrific.
Right. And provides, a sense of social,
Yeah,
a social life. And that's what business
yeah,
does. Business in general provides,
yeah,
a social outlet. And if done right, provides a sense of
yeah,
community. And, the older you get, the more separated you get. I mean, you talked about the pandemic, and both my parents had health issues that started
yeah,
during the pandemic, and I just saw them both decline pretty quickly, because they were more isolated than they had been.
yeah.
And I don't know, I can't help but think that that had something to do with their imminent passing. But
And it is. I mean, if you look historically at some of the great factories, so Cadbury's would in the UK. I used to live in Bourneville, which Craig is a great place to live if you like chocolate because you smell this chocolate through the village when they're producing. But they would have realized the importance of the social part of work. So when Cadbury's was setting up, they built housing all the way around so people could live close. They had much better housing. They developed social clubs so people could meet together. And Guinness in Dublin, where I lived, they did something very similar. Guinness was such a good product back then because the drinking water was terrible. You couldn't, people were getting sick from the drinking water. And they would have had all of this housing around and much better conditions and the opportunity for people to interact in meaningful ways. And these are these are not new business principles, but sometimes they're forgotten. And that's what it's one of the big challenges of modern organizations. I mean, I find that managing a company in Franklin from Northern Ireland, when I get to Franklin, I love it. I just want to meet with people and have coffee with them and talk because I'm just soaking in that kind of those relational things that you meet with people and you care for people on, over Zoom, but it's just wonderful to meet with them face to face.
Right.
And
Right.
in small groups, there's something so enlivening about that. And,
Right.
with people, we're social beings and we ignore that to our peril.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. So tell me, Ivan, about the business now, the business of running Seedbed. What plans do you have? What outlook do you see for next year and the years to come?
Well, it's a little premature. I'm in the middle of preparing our next 3-year plan. So
Uh-huh.
the way I've gone about that is a little bit different. So I've really been trying to get quite a number of people from our community. So everyone on my staff, all of our board of directors, um, a sampling of our donors, of people who pray for us throughout the year, of people from the seminary that founded us, just all to envisage what Seedbed might be by the year 2030. And I would have got 50 or 60 different responses. I mean, 50 or 60 pages of just ideas that I then collated and then sent it back out to people and said, now, would you now start to rank these? Imagine if in all of the areas of books or conferences or all the different areas you had 50 coins that you had to allocate across all of these. You could give all 50 to one, or you could give 5 to 10 of them. Give those coins out so we can start to see where the priorities are. And it's amazing across, we have young people to old people. It's amazing how the same themes just keep emerging. And the great thing is that when I craft people will look at it and say, well, I recognize this. This is, they'll all look at it and think, I wrote this,
Mm-hmm.
because there's such commonality. So areas that we've not developed extensively so far, we want to develop a lot more resources for families.
Mm.
We want to, in 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 kind of the church community, there are just some wonderful Bible studies, particularly where women meet together. And I want to make sure we've just got good material for them. And we want good material for, in if you look at the cross section of America, there's a whole bunch of people who have no faith or certainly don't share the Christian faith. There's some people who are not sure what they want to believe. There's some people who are active in their church. There are some people who are very devout and serious about their faith. And we want to develop resources for every group along that pathway. And, our conviction is God wants a deep, meaningful relationship with all of us. And so how do we develop materials and resources to help people on that journey?
Yeah.
And so there are areas that over the next 2 to 3 years we want to start to develop. And the thing with a business is you can't launch 100 initiatives at once. First of all, you'll end up with no cash flow because you've invested all of your cash and you got to use that money for your operations, and you don't have the personnel to do everything and all the organization structure. So you got to determine, what are the first things we want to do? What's the investment? What will the cash expenditure be? When will we break even? What ROI do we expect? And then when are we next able to start the second tranche of
Mm-hmm.
of of products and innovations? And so that's what I'm now trying to work through, that doing that kind of analysis.
Right. Well, and as you described each one of those groups, uh, those everywhere from very devout,
Yeah.
all the way through to don't even think about it,
Yeah.
and providing those resources. Each one of those segments has seems like they might have a different marketing plan or a different way of
They have
reaching,
to be, because they're different, they're
different
different
segments.
groups asking different questions. I mean, the thing about any business is you're trying to identify an unmet need,
Hmm.
or a need that you think you can meet more effectively than another company. And you're finding ways to meet the needs of people. And
Hmm.
that's what we're trying to write books and produce resources that are meeting the spiritual hunger of many Americans. Uh, and then if you think of, well, if you think of an iPhone, no one thought they needed an iPhone, and it's done quite well. And when Google was launched, no one thought we needed another search engine. There's five or six of them that seem to do quite well. But you figure out, I think either you, as in the way of um, the iPhone, I mean, they found an incredible way for getting multiple different things in a small package. I mean, it's a recording device, it's a camera. You can make calls with it, you can send text, you can listen to
Record.
books, you can play games. I mean, all of the different things you now do for your in your pocket. The same with, so for us, we're looking at what are the needs that people have? What are the felt needs that people have, and how can we help them in that journey as they address them? And so that's fulfilling. It's the same as a baker. How do I create a bread that when someone breaks it and smells it, they feel more alive?
Mhm.
Or if someone's making a rivet, you think, well, that's nothing very exciting, but a rivet that breaks when you're driving along, that's not a lot of fun. So how do I make something that someone might never think about, but it's just really reliable?
Mhm.
And as long as you can feel really proud of that. But our space is helping people to feel awakened to the love of God
Mhm.
and to know that they are loved and God is for them and has a plan for them if they start on that journey. That's something incredibly exciting about that.
Yes, I agree.
And then in the way my career goes, I tend to be in organizations for 5 to 7 years, during which time I train up my team, mentor them, walk alongside them, let them take over while I watch, and then let them get on with it and go and get deployed to do whatever the next project is. And
Hmm.
that's just wonderful.
Hmm.
And that's kind of my sweet spot. Some people are called to be like a CEO of a company all of their life and just work for one company all of their life, and some have worked for multiple companies, and each of those paths are fine and good.
Hmm. So, Ivan, you've been with Seedbed now uh, a
Yeah,
little,
just a year nearly.
you know,
Just yeah.
and so you've got, according to your track record, you've got probably 5 or 6 years left.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
What's the biggest challenge you see in satisfying that vision that you're kind of
So I
striving
think
towards?
I think the biggest, well, there's a number. One, in all small businesses, it's always cash. It's always
Oh yeah.
finances. I mean, you can see all of the exciting new things you could do if you had more investment. I mean, so that's for sure. I think working with highly creative, missionally passionate people, you know, people are wonderful writers and passionate about mission, but that drives them. But making sure that we're all going in the same direction, that's always a challenge as a CEO. So working with authors and writers, it's a little bit like, well, it's quite like when I have faculty in universities. No one comes to the university really because they want to meet the president, unless they want to give a big check, and I'm very happy to receive that. They want to come to meet this incredible scientist who just has got new discoveries, or this English professor who can make J.K. Rowling or whoever just come alive, or who's got this just interesting course. They want to meet faculty, or in a hospital setting, it's much like the consultants. No one goes to the hospital because they want to meet the healthcare manager. They go because they're going to see this amazing physician who's got, I know, new implants for the cornea, or whatever the technology is. And this the same with when you're working with authors. People want to see the authors. They're passionate about what the writers or speakers can bring. And my job as a CEO is kind of make sure we're all heading down the same path, and
Hmm.
we're supporting one another. And my role as the CEO is just to keep building the culture.
Hmm.
Craig, I so believe in building a culture of honor where your colleagues are honored and you catch them doing things that are good and right, and you point it out, and criticisms you do privately. When people do good things, I like to make those public. We have a weekly sync meeting, and when I hear people are doing good things, I just like to say, hey, let's stop. Did you hear what so and so have done? I just want you, this is just great. This is just great initiative, great idea, great behavior. This is what, you showcase them, and you just make sure you honor them and just treat them with great dignity. Because in the end, that's how God treats us. And we
Right.
want to treat I want to treat people like that. And that's a joy. People know when they're trusted and cared for. And, the result is we tend to blossom in those environments. And that's part of my responsibility as CEO.
Yeah, that's business done right. What we were talking
Yeah.
about earlier, right?
Yeah.
That's part of it. Creating a culture. I mean, and what, and we were talking about business owners who are the bakers or the mechanics who have to wear a different hat from being the technical person, and
Yeah.
they don't necessarily understand about creating a culture. You have to grow from being the
Yeah.
technician into being the manager into being the owner, and understanding that being the owner requires different skills than
It
repairing a
does
car or
indeed.
baking a cake.
Yeah. And it's also some wisdom has learned over the years. I mean,
Mm,
you learn the importance of culture when you've made stupid mistakes in the past, or when you've not done things well, or when you've been too impatient with people, or not allowed people to fail within appropriate limits, not mentored people well. And so,
mm,
you know, after you've been through the mill a few times, you learn some wisdom and you learn more grace, I think.
mhm. Do you, Ivan, do you read any John Maxwell?
I do, yeah. I think he's well, I think one of his skills, it's not that he's particularly coming up with amazingly new material. He is an incredibly good communicator to a mass market. So anyone can pick up his books and get something from them. And I like that. Yeah, coming from an academic world, sometimes academics just write to other academics and the papers are boring and dull and no one reads them. But the great thing about writers who are able to make ideas accessible and useful, I mean, that's why he's done so well. And that's why in his areas of communication, people go for him for mentoring and coaching and courses on good communication. He's learned to become a very good writer. He's got good business models. Yeah. So I've just got great respect for him.
Yeah, yeah. And he's been doing it for quite some time,
Yeah,
probably
he's
quite
got to
long.
be in his, I'm going to guess his 70s now.
I'm thinking so as well.
Mm.
But yeah, well, it's been a great conversation learning about you, Ivan, and learning about Seedbed, and hearing your passion just kind of kind of ooze out from you, if that's the right
Well,
description.
I like that phrase. And honestly, that's what any business person in the right seat should be able to do about what they're interested in, whether it's the local newspaper or they sell the bouncy castle for the kids play, or whether they're architects building skills, whatever they're doing, they're not coming alive, made more human and made more alive because of the work. They're probably not quite in the right place yet. And the
Hmm.
privilege we have, Craig, I mean, it is a privilege when you look at the world, is that we get to do jobs we feel called to, that we love, that inspire us, and through which we get to inspire other people. And it doesn't really get much better than that.
Right, right. I couldn't agree with you more. Well, Ivan, thank you again. It's been a pleasure, again, learning about you, learning about the company, and gosh, I look forward to you coming to Franklin. Hopefully, you'll reach out and we can grab a
Yeah,
cup of coffee.
we'll grab a coffee. Look forward to it.
I
Thanks
do
so
as
much,
well.
Craig, and anyone who's listening. Bless you now.
All right. Take care. Have a good day.